Governor, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on.
Let me start with that topic here. Your good friend, the Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, said just this week, he said your campaign's stuck in neutral and that you need to find a spark to counter the, quote, Donald Trump juggernaut. What do you say to him, and do you agree with him?
It's hard work. It's going out. I was just in Iowa the other day, South Carolina, New Hampshire. It's doing town hall meetings. It's doing the sorts of things that, remember 8 years ago about this time, there was, I think, a pullout in October of 2007. Last time we had an open seat for president, and Hillary Clinton was way ahead of some guy by the name of Barack Obama, and Rudy Giuliani and Fred Thompson were ahead of John McCain and Mitt Romney. So there's a lot of work that goes in these races. For us, I think the biggest spark for us is getting the message out that now's not the time to put in place someone who hasn't been tested before. We saw what a mistake that was under Barack Obama. What we need is someone who's been tested. I've been tested unlike anybody else in this race on the Republican side.
But is Trump, do you feel as if Trump has changed your strategy, dictated things a little bit differently?
No, I mean, in Iowa, we're going through all 99 states. In a couple weeks, I'll be in New Hampshire in all 10 counties. I should say in Iowa, it's 99 counties. In South Carolina, we were just at the Citadel the other day. That was the second time this week we've been in that state. We're out there doing the grassroots. We thought earlier this year that this was going to be a tight race against a bunch of different qualified candidates, and that the candidate that had the strongest message and ultimately the best organization would be the one that's going to win. And that's what we're committed to doing, putting in the time and effort. It's like Big Ten football. It's blocking, it's tackling, it's doing the mechanics to get the job done.
Why, new poll that was out this week in your home state, you're at 39% job approval. Barack Obama's at 48%. Why does he have a higher job rating in Wisconsin than you do?
Well, 4 years ago, I was so low in the polls, they called me Dead Man Walker, because back then we were pushing big, bold reforms, kind of like the big, bold reforms, again, we pushed in this latest budget. A year later, I won the recall with a higher percentage of the vote and a higher number of votes. Why? Because our reforms worked. For all the hype and hysteria of the 100,000 protesters, our schools are better. In fact, ACT scores, again, are second best in the country. Our graduation rates are up. Our third grade reading scores are up. The same thing will hold true here when people see that for students like my son, who's a junior at the University of Wisconsin, the reforms are going to work there as well. Property taxes continue to go down. When people see the benefits of our reforms, just like they did 4 years ago, I think our numbers will go up again.
But why shouldn't your poll numbers matter in your state to a voter? A Republican voter in New Hampshire, South Carolina sits there and says, geez, his home state doesn't like him. John Kasich over here, he's got 60% job approval. Scott Walker's got 39%.
Well, the difference is,
why should that matter?
Well, the difference is it should matter. And you should want someone who doesn't care about the next election. They care about the next generation. That's the difference. I went out and pushed big, bold reforms in my first term. I haven't let up. I'm the kind of leader who's going to go out and say, I don't care about the next election. I care about what's right for the next generation. I'm going to take on reforms, whether it's taking on the unions. Heck, I pushed defunding Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before most of these other candidates pushed it out there. If you want someone who's been tested, nobody else has been tested in this race, and that means you've got to be willing to do things that might not raise you up in the polls immediately. In the end, it didn't just get almost unanimous support amongst Republicans the last two elections. We carried independents by 11, almost 12 points. Why? Because I think independents, not just in my state, but across America, what they want more than anything is leadership. They want someone to look them in the eye, tell them what they're going to do. That's what I'm doing with America. I'm looking in the eye, tell them what I'm going to do to repeal Obamacare. I looked them in the eye just the other day, tell them what I'm going to do to fight ISIS and other forms of radical Islamic terrorism. And that's what I'm going to do. Not in bumper stickers, not in headlines, but literally spend the time looking the voters in the eye and tell them what we're going to do.
I want to go deep in foreign policy in a minute, but I want to stick with your governing style and your neighboring state in Minnesota. It's been an interesting experiment to watch, right?
Yeah.
Wisconsin and Minnesota, the two of you, very different public policy paths. You cut spending, took on the unions, didn't expand Medicaid under health care. Minnesota raised taxes. They raised the minimum wage. They expanded Medicaid. All these data points. Minnesota right now has stronger numbers than Wisconsin. A lower unemployment rate, faster growing economy, fewer people without health insurance, and it is viewed as a better state to do business by a lot. They're in the top 10, Wisconsin in the middle of the pack. What do you say?
Depends on the ranking, but if you look at Minnesota, it's at a lower unemployment rate for 25 years. So this, or something like that in the last two and a half decades. So that's not an apples to apples comparison. Otherwise, I could do the same thing with Illinois, which has a much, much higher unemployment rate because of the many years of Democrat control there. The difference should be, how does America stand up with Wisconsin? I had an unemployment rate before I came in of over 8%. It's down to 4.6%. We made up for all the jobs that were lost during the recession. And we have a labor participation rate, which, as you know, is the rate at which people are working. It's almost 5 points higher than it is nationally. Our economy is working very well because we took on those challenges. You talk about uninsured. the Kaiser Family Foundation, which isn't exactly a conservative think tank, said I'm the only state in America that does not have an insurance gap, even though I did not take the Obamacare Medicaid expansion out there because I didn't think it was a good deal for the taxpayers. I didn't think it was good for America.
Still, job growth of the Midwestern states, Wisconsin's last, according to the fourth quarter of 2014. And it has been lower than its Midwestern neighbors. Why?
Well, again, we're heavily dependent on manufacturing, and that's been something that's been slow, not just there, but across the country. Again, if you look at our numbers, though, we went from, in fact, when I ran, it was 9.2% unemployment. It's down to 4.6. We're doing better than America. We're doing better in terms of employment. The unemployment numbers going down. We're doing better in terms of labor participation rates. We're doing measure, even when it comes to better, the measure of businesses and what they think about our state. When I ran, just 10% back in 2010, thought we were in the right direction. Over the last couple of years, it's been consistently over 90% of our job creators say we're doing a great job. And if you look at the rankings, Chief Executive Magazine, which is one of the best rankings out there, listed us in the bottom 10 back in 2010. We've been in the top 15 the last 2 years.
I guess I'm looking at, so Minnesota did a liberal, went the liberal way and progressive policies. You went the conservative way and conservative
Well, no,
policies.
they've had a mixed vote. In the last 4 years, they've had a Democrat governor, but part of that time they've had a Republican legislature. In fact, the Republican House Speaker just came out and endorsed us the other day because they're trying to do some of the tax relief that we're trying to push. Minnesota is going in a different direction. In fact, they've got a state exchange that's such an abysmal mess. They're looking at possibly getting out of that. We didn't take on those sorts of risks for the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin. All
right, let me go to a Facebook question here. This was probably the topic that got brought up by more posters than anybody, which was the Milwaukee Bucks deal.
Yeah.
How can you talk, this is from Sam Barron, how can you talk about being a fiscally responsible conservative and then approve a $250 million in public funding deal for billionaires so billionaires can get a shiny new arena? What do you say to this?
Not one penny of new taxpayers' dollars. You talk about being a fiscally responsible person. I am. That's precisely why I did this. $6.5 million every year. Right now, $6.5 million per year comes into the state of Wisconsin in income taxes, not in all these other things that people talk about, in income taxes from NBA players that play in the state of Wisconsin. I would lose that money if we did nothing. The state of Wisconsin is capped at less than $4 million per year. So for $6.5 million, we put $4 million in to keep it, and over the next 20 years, but
$250 million in tax breaks. You go to your I heard your $6.5 million. It would take 38 years to get that $250 million back.
No, that's all. That's just the state. The state's commitment is $4 million. It's not $250. It's $4 million a year over the next.
They're getting a bunch of tax breaks.
No, they're getting assistance from the city and the county, of which I'm not the one doing that. The city and the county are doing that. For the state of Wisconsin, it's less than $4 million a year to protect $6.5 million we collect. And over the next 20 years, that grows to a total of just shy of $300 million the state collects in income taxes for less than $80 million. I'd be a fool. You'd be ridiculing me. You'd be doing a story about how outrageous it is that I would let that money go out the door, that I can't use for property tax relief, I can't use for investing in schools and others. Anybody who looks at the numbers says it's cheaper to keep them. That's what we did. We didn't do what these other plans do, where they project it off of what are the benefits of restaurants and bars. That's not a part of our equation. It's actual money we save versus the money we invest.
One of the owners is your national finance.
That's not true at all. The two owners.
One of the investors in there, John Hammond.
Tiny little investor. Two of the owners are billionaires from New York City, of which the top one is someone who's a bundler for Hillary Clinton. If this was political, there's no way I'd be supporting. The previous owner, Herb Kohl, who put $100 million of his own money in to help build this, is one of the longest-serving Democrats in the United States. It has nothing to do with politics.
So Mr. Hammis's role has nothing to do with getting this deal done.
I mean, he's
your finance chair. He's also an investor in this.
A tiny little investor. You put a couple bucks in, it's like saying you got a share in the Green Bay Packers. Sure, like a lot of people.
4 shares.
You see, you got 4 shares. Well, you're an owner. But if I talked about making a change into Lambeau Field, I wouldn't say I did it for Chuck Todd. I said I would do it because it made sense for the people in my state, and that's exactly what this does.
All right, let's go to your foreign policy speech. I found it interesting that the first thing you brought up in your foreign policy speech was securing the border. And you said that was basically your #1 priority, and that you're concerned about terrorists coming over the border. The most famous incident that we had of terrorists coming over a border was on our northern border. Why aren't you talking about securing the northern border?
Well, I think we need to secure borders in general. We spend all this money on TSA, but I think right now one of the most rampant spots is on our southern-based border. When I was there earlier this year with Governor Abbott, in his Texas public safety. They actually showed us the list of people. These are just people they have actually caught, not many others that probably are going across the border, but people that they have caught from places far beyond Mexico, far beyond Latin America. And I think it does raise some very legitimate concerns. If we're spending excuse me, millions of dollars on TSA at our airports, if we're spending all sorts of money on port security, it only makes sense to me that if part of what we're trying to do is protect ourselves, set aside immigration for a minute, but protect ourselves from risk out there, I think we should make sure we have a secure border.
But why are we always talking about the southern border and building a fence there? We don't talk about a northern border.
Where
if this is about securing the border from potentially terrorists coming over.
Well,
we want to build a wall north of the border,
Some
too?
people have asked us about that in New Hampshire. They raised some very legitimate concerns, including some law enforcement folks that brought that up to me at one of our town hall meetings about a week and a half ago. So that is a legitimate issue for us to look at. To me, when I brought this up in front of the Citadel, I said there are a couple key things. You need to secure the homeland. You need to go after terrorists around the world, particularly in the Middle East, be it ISIS or Iran or others that are willing to do harm against us. You need to reestablish our friendships with our allies like Israel and the Sunni Arab states that feel just as threatened by Iran as do the Israelis. And we need to rebuild our military. Those were the things we laid out in our speech to the cadets at the Citadel. But to me, it starts with securing the homeland. It wasn't just about building a wall and securing our borders. It was also about making sure our intelligence community has the ability for counter-terrorism and the ability to go after the infrastructure they need to protect us.
While I'm here, quickly on immigration, the birthright citizenship issue. Can I get a final? There was some confusion last week on your issue.
Well, it's pretty clear.
You were for getting rid of it. You weren't. Where are you on this?
No, what I have pointed out repeatedly since the beginning of this year, this is not new. People have heard me, some of the folks from NBC have covered me, heard me say this 1,000 times. Secure the border, enforce the laws, no amnesty, go forward in a way that provides for a legal immigration system that puts a priority in American working families and their wages in a way that will improve the American economy. I said, whether it's talking about the 14th Amendment or anything else, until we secure the border and enforce the laws, we shouldn't be talking about any other issue out there. And politicians that do are trying to distract from the fact that for years in this town, in Washington, D.C., politicians have made promises about securing the border and enforcing the laws they haven't been able to fulfill. The one thing people tell you in my state, Democrat and Republican alike, is if I make a promise, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and we're going to secure the border and enforce the laws. When we do that, it takes care of almost every one of these other issues out there.
Okay.
So I'm not talking about changing. I'm talking about. I'm not talking about.
Keep it in place.
I'm not talking about
birthright
changing.
Citizenship stays.
I'm not talking about changing the Constitution. I'm talking about enforcing the laws of this country so that we don't have sanctuary cities. We have an E-Verify system that works and is effective, and that we truly secure the border so that people, no matter what their purpose, aren't coming into America unless they're here legally.
All right, let's go foreign policy. You have said famously, and I've heard you a number of times, you're going to basically try to tear up this agreement with Iran on day one. Why not give it a chance and see if it works?
Well, I've seen.
I mean, we don't know yet if it's going to work, right? We don't know. You don't know yet if it's going to work. So why make this pledge that you automatically know you're going to tear it up?
Well, I know. I have no problem doing a deal if it's on our terms. This is just a horrible deal. This is a horrible deal. And it's not just Republicans like me saying. I mean, Chuck Schumer isn't exactly Mr. Conservative out there. He knows this is a bad deal. Other Democrats know this is a bad deal. The American people know this is a bad deal. If you know it's a bad deal and you know it today, why do you need a week or a month to put a cabinet in or a panel in there? You need to tear it up and say, you want to do a deal with us? Here's the deal. You need to go out and completely get rid of your illicit nuclear infrastructure. You need to completely get rid of it. Secondly, you need to have full disclosure. None of these side deals like we heard about the other day where somehow the Iranians are able to be a part of their own inspection out there. Full disclosure, absolute timely disclosure. And then on top of that, you need to start dealing with the destructive behaviors that Iran is directly involved in when it comes to state-sponsored terrorism. The money that would be gained by lifting these sanctions will largely go into places like Hamas and Hezbollah and others that have a direct intention on taking out Israel. It'll probably indirectly go into prop up Assad in Syria. It'll help the Houthi rebels in places like Yemen. This is a bad deal for Israel. It's a bad deal for America. It's a bad deal for the world. Why would we want to keep it for one moment?
But on day one, if you renege on the deal, what the Obama administration agreed to, the Iranians then will have gotten money already from the deal and now feel carte blanche then to go and restart their nuclear ambition.
Well,
because they can say, well, the Americans have reneged on their part of the deal, we're reneging on our part.
Well, from our standpoint, we're sending a clear message today, so it doesn't sneak up anybody else out there, that in the future, we're going to pull back on it. If you want to do business, you got to decide, are you going to do it with Iran or are you going to do it with America?